Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. We'll bring you the latest on the developing news from Israel and Gaza. Hamas has released 2 U.S. hostages. The UN Secretary General is at the Rafah border pushing for aid to get through. We'll get the latest and put that all into context with a political scientist. And we discuss trying to find rental housing in BC when you have a pet. It's the most common reason for pets being surrendered to the BC SPCA. Call us on those challenges. Plus, after 12:30, Canada's greatest soccer player retires. Share your favorite Christine Sinclair moments. Welcome to BC Today. I'm Michelle Eliot. Thank you for joining us on CBC Radio 1, live streaming on CBC Gem, cbc.ca/BC, and on the CBC Vancouver YouTube page. We are in the 14th day of the Israel and Hamas conflict, and the number of casualties continues to rise. Just over 1,400 people have been killed in Israel and over 4,600 injured. And the Gaza region has recorded more than 4,000 deaths, including at least 1,500 children, 1,000 women, and 11 journalists, which the occupied West Bank has approximately 81 deaths. The injuries for the Palestinian region in both regions are close to 14,000 people. And out of a reported 200 Israeli hostages being held by Hamas in Gaza, 2 American Israeli hostages, a mother and a daughter, have just been released to the Red Cross. The biggest Israeli town near the Lebanon border has been ordered to evacuate as Israel prepares to begin its ground offensive. And meanwhile, international aid is waiting to cross into Gaza from Egypt, but that crossing remains closed. Well, here to give us the latest on the unfolding humanitarian crisis is Mira Sukharov, professor and associate chair of Carleton University's Department of Political Science. Good afternoon to you.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres arrived at the Rafah border today between Gaza and Egypt, making a plea for officials to let humanitarian aid get through to Palestinians. And 200 trucks, 2,700 tons of aid waiting. What are the barriers?
Well, one of the barriers is very basic, and that is that the road on the other side of the Rafah crossing on the Gaza side has been bombed during the Israeli counteroffensive. And so from what I understand, they are trying to rebuild it as we speak to literally pave the way for these life-saving trucks to come in to the Gaza Strip.
And this is despite apparently having had a deal earlier this week.
Yes, I mean, it's been much slower than it needs to be and than it should be. And I certainly hope it happens quickly.
What is your reaction to that? You know, as the hours and days go by, what kind of humanitarian crisis are we looking at?
Well, the World Health Organization has repeatedly warned us that the situation is highly perilous. Palestinians, there are over 2 million Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. They do not have sufficient water, sufficient food, sufficient fuel, medical supplies, and so the humanitarian situation is really disastrous right now.
Professor Sukharov, for days now, and it seems more imminent, Israel seems poised to begin its ground offensive in Gaza. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited troops amassed at the border to Gaza. What do you think of that? What more do we know about that possibility?
Well, we're certainly not certain that it will happen, but it seems very likely that it will. There is a deterrent effect even by Israel amassing its thousands of troops on the border. There's a deterrent effect that perhaps Hamas will stand down and release hostages, and stop its rocket attacks to Israeli population centers. Nevertheless, it does seem Israel is seeming to say that the ground invasion will be imminent. They've said that it won't be days. It will take longer than simply days. It'll take longer than simply weeks. So this could be a very long new development in the war. It'll be very bloody. When ground troops go in, militaries need to clear the way, so to speak, to make way for their troops, for their tanks. That will likely result in many more Palestinian casualties, civilian casualties. There will be firefights in very narrow, densely populated urban areas. It's going to be very lethal.
And what is the likelihood that the conflict could, as lethal as that is, even spread further? There have been clashes at the border with Lebanon.
Yes, so Hezbollah, which is a non-state actor stationed in South Lebanon, Hezbollah and the Israeli military have been shelling one another, trading fire since the war began. Since the Gaza war began, we've seen that Israel has evacuated 20,000 of its citizens from Kiryat Shmona, one of its most northern towns. I think Israel has no incentive to fight a war on two fronts. Last time it fought intensively against Hezbollah was in 2006. I don't think Israel wants to see a repeat of that. So everyone is sort of standing, watching cautiously. I don't think Hezbollah either also does not want to be on the receiving end of major Israeli force. Hezbollah is flexing its muscles, we could say. And it's also worth noting that, like Hamas, Hezbollah receives funding from Iran.
I guess people are watching, all of this with great concern, grave concern, and horror. What do you see as the way forward? What might happen in the coming days?
International actors, Canada, the US, the UN, Europe, we need to see calls for a ceasefire. We need to see calls for de-escalation. We need to see calls, demands for Hamas to release hostages. If there are those who can negotiate or broker a hostage deal or a prisoner exchange with the many Palestinians languishing in Israeli jails, that's another avenue. But this is a humanitarian crisis, enormous humanitarian crisis, enormous loss of life, and it's a very, very disturbing situation.
And when it comes to those international actors, of course, the U.S. president visited Israel, said he stood firm behind Israel, yet he did mention compassion for Palestinians caught in the crossfire in his address last night. How impactful are those words?
Well, the U.S. is under American President Biden is funding Israel or is trying to fund Israel to the tune of billions for this war effort. So that certainly will strengthen Israel's resolve. It certainly, of course, strengthens its capabilities, but the idea that it strengthens its resolve, its desire, its willingness to go in and extend the war. The U.S. has also pledged humanitarian aid for the Palestinians in Gaza, as has Canada. So there is, in a sense, there are two really conflicting messages. One is fight the war that you want to fight, and at the same time protect civilians. And that's a conflicting message that the U.S. is giving Israel. It's not surprising because we know where the U.S. allegiances often stand politically, but at the same time, everyone has to call for restraint, de-escalation, and encouraging Israel, pressing Israel to follow international humanitarian law, distinguishing as much as possible between combatants and civilians, using no more force than is necessary. That's called the principle of proportionality, and avoiding collective punishment. The siege on 2 million Palestinians is against international law. You cannot engage in collective punishment against a civilian population. We already know, of course, that Hamas has no compunctions about targeting civilians. The massacre of October 7th was a war crime, a crime against humanity, the massacre by Hamas of Israelis. But, as a famous Jewish sage has said, what is hateful unto you, do not do unto your neighbor. And so that's really, I think, the message we have to get across right now.
We heard in our news the latest comments from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau reiterating Canada's commitment to a two-state solution in the Middle East. He says the world needs a Palestinian state and Israel to coexist in peace, safety, and prosperity. What is the role for Canada here now?
Well, recall that many years ago in the early 1990s, Canada played quite a significant role in the Israeli Arab peace talks. At the time, it was a joint Palestinian-Jordanian delegation that was involved. Canada led a working group on refugees. And since then, Canada's played not nearly the kind of visible role it did back then, nor have peace talks been very present in the last many years between Israel and the Palestinians. But Canada should maintain its commitment to some sort of solution. I mean, there's a lot of cynicism right now in the region and among many seasoned observers that a two-state solution, that the the opportunity, the window for a two-state solution has come and gone. There are other solutions being talked about by very intelligent and sensitive analysts, like a confederation type, where you would have two states, but you would have freedom of movement between both. You would have freedom of residency across both, sort of like an EU framework. Refugees could return in those situations. Right now, trust is extremely low. Both societies are extremely traumatized. And so right now, I think psychological support, the idea of easing the suffering and enabling both sides to recover from this huge trauma that each side's inflicting on the other is going to take some time.
What about here at home? There have been concerns raised about a rise in anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. What can be done to address that and ensure that that doesn't continue?
Statements by leaders preempting, preventing, condemning anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, anti-Arab and anti-Muslim sentiment at the lower grassroots level. I know I am Jewish, and my son's teacher in high school reached out to him privately to check whether he's feeling okay. I think those small measures are valuable. I know some people sometimes worry, should I check in? Should I ask someone if they're okay, because they don't want to put them on the spot. But I think usually people appreciate that. So our Muslim students also need supporting Palestinian students. And we have to take care that any statements that we put out by unions, by organizations, by university administrations have first and foremost the value of compassion and respect for human life.
Really appreciate your joining us. Thank you so much, and we'll continue to stay on this story.
You're welcome.
Mira Sukharov is a professor and associate chair of Carleton University's Department of Political Science. It is 12:17 now, 1:17 in the Mountain Time Zone. You're with BC Today here on CBC. We're on Radio 1, 88.1 FM in Metro Vancouver. You can catch us online as well, live streaming, cbc.ca/BC. You can now watch us on CBC Gem and on YouTube. You can search for CBC Vancouver. Turning our attention now here to BC. There's the ongoing issue for years now of finding rental housing when you are a pet owner. The BC SPCA finds the number one reason for pets being surrendered is because of the lack of pet-friendly housing and people who can't find housing with their animals. Now, last month, the Union of BC Municipalities approved a resolution to support pet-friendly housing in the non-profit sector. We're asking you, what are the challenges of finding housing when you have a pet? You can call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. You can also email us, bctoday@cbc.ca. And I have a guest now joining me to take your calls. Megan Kant is the manager of Companion Animal Welfare, Science and Policy with the BC SPCA. Megan, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, Michelle.
Well, what have you observed from your end when it comes to pets and rental housing?
Definitely, as you mentioned in your intro there, it is for adults and senior animals. It is the number one reason for surrender to our shelters, that people are just encountering pet restrictions and pet bans, and it just means they have to make a difficult choice between having a roof over their heads and keeping their pet.
What impact does that have on people?
Definitely, when we're looking at adult and senior animals, these are likely relationships that people have had for a while. So this is an animal that's a part of their family, means so much to them. Probably they rely on them for that social and emotional support. So it's incredibly difficult for them to make that decision. And when they do make that decision, often they can feel quite judged for it. So when they're grieving the loss of that pet, they often don't have people they can turn to understand, because they worry about being judged for their decision.
Right. What do they say to you when they arrive at the SPCA with the animal and have to have made that decision?
Usually they're telling us that this is their absolutely last resort, that they've tried everything they can. Often it's months and months that they've spent searching for housing, looking online for places that will accept pets. They're turning to friends or family to see if anyone else is able to take their pet. So at least the animal could still be sort of in their lives. So when they're coming to us, they've exhausted all other options.
And what about for the pets? What is the impact on them to be separated?
Definitely. I mean, it's turning their world upside down. A shelter, we do our best to provide a great environment for the animals in our care, but of course, a shelter by its very nature is a stressful environment. And suddenly, they've gone from everything they know to completely an unfamiliar environment with strangers looking after them. So
Yeah.
it's very emotionally traumatic, I would say, for the animal as well.
What impact does it have on an animal's, long-term health for the rest of their lives?
It's hard to say. I don't know what research would say about that, but I think this is an event that an animal would remember for a long time. That
Yeah.
it causes them a lot of anxiety, and I think, of course, could impact sort of when they integrate into a new home and are readopted, to settle in and kind of understand that this is a permanent place because they've had that permanent place already, or what they thought was a permanent place
Right.
already taken from them. So yeah, I would say there could be long-term impacts.
Perhaps, Megan, you can go through just what are the rules in BC?
Yeah, definitely. So we have provincial legislation, the Residential Tenancy Act, which allows landlords to either ban pets outright or just place restrictions on pets. So the type of pets that people can have, the number of pets that people can have, as well as the size of pets that people can have.
Okay. And so in practical terms, what does that mean for someone who has a dog or two and is looking for rental housing?
Definitely, if you have a dog, especially if that dog is large, it means it's going to be just that much harder to find a place to live. Often the size restrictions will translate into either like weight or height restrictions. So that means that you're more likely to find housing if you have a smaller dog, but not if you have a larger dog, if you have more than one. So perhaps if you have two dogs that are strongly bonded and you're only allowed to keep one, making that choice would be impossible, I think, to make. Or if you have a cat and a dog, how do you choose who you want to keep and who you perhaps surrender to a shelter?
Are there exemptions made for support animals?
So it's a little bit tricky. So under legislation, official guide and service dogs, you're not allowed, landlords cannot refuse those pets. But when it comes to emotional support animals, that's sort of a fuzzy category that isn't officially protected by any legislation. People can perhaps go to a medical health, like a healthcare provider, and to get a letter saying that, this animal is necessary for my treatment, is necessary for my mental health, but still there is no official protection in legislation for emotional support animals.
Okay. My guest is Megan Kant with the BC SPCA, and we are talking about pets and rental housing. What are the challenges of finding a place to rent when you have a pet? You can call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. And Ignacio is joining us from Prince George. Hi, Ignacio. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yes, what's been your experience?
So back in 2017, my family was moving from Texas to Prince George here in BC, and we were looking for some rental housing. There was very, very few options, and it turned out that the only place we could find didn't allow for pets, and so we had to leave our Chihuahua weenie mix that we had rescued from Southside San Antonio with a family member. Very grateful that we had someone who could take care of him. But our kids really struggled that first year, moving to a new country, getting to know new people, and not having like their puppy was really a challenge. And then thankfully, about a year after we had settled in, we were able to buy a place and we were able to reunite. So we had a happy ending.
You
but it
were
was
able to
definitely a
reunite?
struggle. Yes, we were, thankfully.
What was that process like?
Going through all the paperwork, making sure that you have all your forms filled out, that
Yeah.
your dog has all the vaccinations. And then, there are no direct flights from Texas to Prince George, so we had to stop in Vancouver. There was a delay, and so I remember that I had to walk around with our dog, Guillermo, around the Vancouver airport because he needed to walk around because our flight was delayed. So for around 8 hours, I had to come up with a makeshift dog leash. I ended up having to buy a really long iPhone charging cable to wrap around his collar. But he's happy with us.
So you have a happy ending to your story then, Ignacio.
Totally, but I could see had it taken us longer, had the housing market been what it is today. It's quite possible that we never would have reconnected with our dog. And my mom was taking care of him. She ended up having health issues. So it could have very easily ended up in a situation where she would have had to pass along the dog to somebody else.
Okay. Ignacio, thanks so much for sharing your story.
Thank you so much.
You take care. And Guillermo, too. That's Ignacio calling us from Prince George. Megan Kant is with me, the manager of Companion Animal Welfare Science and Policy with the BC SPCA. So there it is, right? He couldn't find a place that allowed pets. What are the reasons that landlords give for having, I guess, what are called no pets clauses or not allowing pets in their units?
I think probably just the risks associated with pets are top of mind. So I think probably one of the number ones would be concerns about damage. So if the pet is going to cause damage to flooring or furniture in the house. Also, perhaps if you're in a multi-unit building, they're concerned about sort of conflicts that might occur with other people that live in the building. So if the dog is barking a lot or if someone else has allergies, these are the sorts of concerns that are raised to us for sure.
Okay. And so what difference or what would you call for then? You know, we have the UBCM calling for more support for pet-friendly housing for the nonprofit sector. You know, what is the BC SPCA calling for when it comes to pet-friendly housing?
Well, actually, the second part of that resolution actually calls on the provincial government to sort of bring together different stakeholders so that we can start to work on collaborative solutions, because in our, we've always focused on this issue from such an animal perspective because we're seeing it firsthand with animals coming into our shelters, but realizing that it's very much a human issue as well, with people on both sides and understanding that there are concerns on both sides. So it's to bring together animal welfare organizations with tenant associations, landlord associations, just to see what we can do to sort of bump those people over the line, people that aren't sure about allowing pets. What can we do to encourage them that would make them feel good and safe about making that choice to allow pets in their buildings?
Okay. Before I go back to our callers, we did reach out to a landlord association, the Landlord BC CEO, David Hutniak, and he emailed us a statement that says partly, we have noticed that most new purpose-built rental buildings are pet-friendly, thereby increasing the availability of homes for people and their pets. In the context of the existing stock, recognizing that a disproportionate majority of it is secondary market housing, so basement suites and the like, we remain firm in our position that the decision to permit pets must rest with the rental housing provider or owner. There are issues around damage, health like allergies, quiet enjoyment of other tenants, and an inability to secure a significant enough damage deposit up front to mitigate some of those costs. So that comment from David Hutniak, CEO of Landlord BC. And my guest is Megan Kant with the BC SPCA, as we ask you for your experiences. What are the challenges of finding a rental unit, rental housing, when you are a pet owner? And Ross is on the line from Vancouver. Hi, Ross.
Hello.
Hi. What's your experience with having a pet and finding housing?
Well, I operated a 16-suite apartment building for many, many years. And it was always, and I had a pet myself, but it all came down to the level of care that they're going to give an animal. And when the care isn't enough, you can end up with a suite that smells like ammonia or urine. And, the deposits that are taken for somebody having an animal, well, you may have to replace all of the carpets. That's thousands of dollars. And a deposit just isn't going to cover that. And taking somebody to small claims court, it's like trying to get blood out of a stone. So that is part of the reason that, there may be difficulties. And an example that I have recently is a young couple moves into a building and they have a cat. They get a kitten. And then 8 months later, now they have another kitten. 6 months go by again. Now they have a dog. Now it's out of control. And what do you do?
And so what assurances would a landlord like yourself be looking for then at the outset?
Well, I guess I kind of hate to paint everybody with the same brush, but I won't allow animals. Fish is one thing, but even that, if you have a large aquarium and the thing ruptures and it goes down 4 floors and all the water damage it can cause, there are liability issues. And I guess the one thing is there an insurance policy that can be purchased by tenants that have animals that would cover this sort of damage?
Right. And I guess as likely as it would be that you would have a tenant who doesn't take care of their pets, it may also be likely that you have a tenant who takes care of their pets, no?
Well, like I said, I don't want to paint everybody with the same brush, because I do know people that have animals, and they're very responsible about it. Their suite doesn't smell. They take their little dog out, 5-pound dog out, for whatever walks it needs. They clean up after their animal on the street. And the opposite happens. I mean, just not too long ago, you saw, this young person with a dog, and the dog makes a mess on the ground, and the owner just walks away.
Okay. Ross,
and we all experience that.
yeah, really good to hear from you, Ross. Thank you so much for calling.
You're welcome. Thank you.
You too. Take care. And let me get a quick reaction from Megan Kent on that. So those are the concerns he has about, pet care translating really into the care of the home as well.
And definitely those are our concerns we've heard before, and we definitely appreciate those, because in a time where, cost of living is just going up for everyone, that includes landlords, they're struggling as well. So that's why I feel with this UBCM resolution, waiting for the provincial government's response to see what they'll say, just to start having these conversations, because we've never really come together at the table before. So to start to address those concerns, to see what we can do together, because I know as a single organization, we don't have all the answers. So that's why it's so important to be collaborative.
And I know that at the SPCA, you do have a guide for pet owners in terms of what they can provide, what information they can provide to potential landlords, and how they can foster a positive relationship with landlords. So we'll get some tips from you on that in just a few moments. My guest, Megan Kent, is the Manager of Companion Animal Welfare, Science and Policy with the BC SPCA. We'll go back to your calls and Megan discussing what it's like, what the challenges are when you are trying to find rental housing and have a pet in your life. Back to that conversation. And in about 10-15 minutes from now, we'll talk about Christine Sinclair. Yes, Canada's greatest soccer player is announcing that she is hanging up her cleats, retiring. And so we'll take your best Christine Sinclair moments. I have some of mine coming up. All of that after this CBC News Update with Robert Zimmerman.
Good afternoon. Premier David Eby and the other premiers across the country have sent a joint letter to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau asking Ottawa to extend the repayment of CBA. It was a pandemic program that offered interest-free loans to small businesses. The current repayment deadline is January of next year. The letter says small businesses are feeling squeezed by rising costs and interest rates. Ottawa has committed almost $10 million to support BC tech firms. The money will go toward what the government is calling the integrated marketplace. Officials say it's a platform for BC firms to develop new innovations and support climate goals. And as Michelle mentioned, Burnaby's Christine Sinclair is retiring from international soccer. The 40-year-old is the world's all-time scorer with 190 international goals. She's expected to play 4 more games for Canada and will continue to play for her professional team in Portland. And now the forecast on the North Coast, mainly sunny this afternoon with a high of 12. Highs up to 12 with lots of sunshine as well in the Peace. In the central interior, a mix of sun and cloud with a high of 9. Highs to 19 with some sunshine in parts of the Kootenays. In the southern interior, a mix of sun and cloud with a high of 16. And for Metro Vancouver, Greater Victoria and the Fraser Valley, cloudy this afternoon with highs around 15. I'll have more local news at the top of the hour. Now back to Michelle with BC Today.
Thanks so much, Rob. That is Robert Zimmerman in the CBC Vancouver newsroom. Welcome back. You're with BC Today here on CBC. We're on Radio 1, 88.1 FM in Metro Vancouver, and we're live streaming too. CBC Gem is where you can find us, or on our website, cbc.ca/BC, on YouTube as well, on the CBC Vancouver page. And we have been taking your calls on the topic of pets and rental housing. That is our pet column for today. It has been an ongoing issue for years in BC, and the UBCM has recently passed a motion to request the province to direct BC Housing to develop strategies and guidance that supports pet-friendly policies. Asking you about the challenges of finding pet-friendly housing. My guest is Megan Kant, Manager of Companion Animal Welfare Science and Policy of the BC SPCA. Tracy has a story to share from Penticton. Hi, Tracy. What's your experience?
Hey, as you just mentioned, this has been going on for many years. And when I had my first child, I applied for BC Housing. When I got into BC Housing, I was required to give up my cat in order to get in. And I'd had my cat for 14 years. And we'd been through everything together. And she died about a month later, I think probably of a broken heart. And I've never gotten over it.
You had to rehome her?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
It sounds like it still hurts.
It does. I mean, our pets are so good for our mental health. They're companions. Hard times, they're part of our family. And it felt like I had to choose between having a house and having a pet. And I think that's ongoing for a lot of people.
What do you think needs to be done, Tracy?
Well, I think that they're making steps in the right direction by, trying to make these policies so that things are more available for renters to be able to have pets. So I'm happy to hear that there's things going forward and that there's some changes trying to be made, because this has been going on, like I said, this was 15 years ago for me.
Wow. And you still, I'm sure, have those memories close to you, close to your heart.
Yeah.
I'm sorry about that, Tracy. Thank you very much. I appreciate hearing from you.
All right.
You take
Thanks
care.
for doing the show.
That's Tracy from Penticton. And Katz is joining us now from Abbotsford. And Katz happens to be a veterinarian. Hello.
Hi there.
Hi. What did you want to say about rental housing and pets?
So I would like to say that I've been practicing for about 25 years, and the strength of the human-animal bond is so strong that people consider their pets as part of the family. And to not allow pets to live with their parents is like taking children away from their parents. And in many situations, I see people not having human children, but having pets instead, and they truly are part of the family. And it's so important that housing is available for families.
You heard you might have heard the landlord who called in earlier, who said, the impact of a pet owner who doesn't take care of their pets, affects the quality of the unit. So what advice would you have then for pet owners, in terms of the onus on them to ensure that they are taking care of their pets and reassure the owners?
Well, the landlord that called in earlier had the suggestion of an insurance that pet owners could, if an insurance was available for damage. I think that's a fantastic idea. If that is available, that's something that we could look into to protect landlords. It is a real concern for people who don't take care of their pets. I think that landlords can ask for references from places that residents or renters have been living at before, to give some virtue of reliability. I also think they can ask for references from veterinarians to show that they are responsible pet owners. They do go to the vet. They do take care of their animals, and that would going to a veterinarian is one example of how to show proof that somebody's responsible for a pet owner. And then, of course, deposits, tenant deposits for pets. And I think that it's reasonable to ask for a reasonable deposit that could cover potential costs, and to ask tenants to show that they have insurance if that's available.
Great to hear from you, Katz. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having the topic.
And our last caller on this before I go back to our guest is Lynn in Victoria. Hi, Lynn.
Hi, Michelle. Hi, Megan. I'm just expressing frustration. I moved to my present apartment in 2014 with a cat. And She died 2 years later at 24 years. And then they said no more pets. And yet the smokers in the building are grandfathered in. And I find that frustrating, as I would never have moved here had I known that they were going to change their mind about pets. You know, they can let the smokers stay, and yet the cat situation, you know, I just don't think it's quite rational.
And you would like to get another cat?
Oh, I'd love to, yeah. I just, you know, but under the circumstances, rentals in Victoria are so expensive.
Right.
And I don't want to rock the boat because I need this home at the price that it is, you know, this rental. So anyway, it's just frustrating that people can change their mind and it affects people's lives.
Lynn, thank you very much for sharing that too, at this time.
Bye now.
Bye-bye. You take care, Lynn in Victoria. Let's wrap up with Megan Kant from the BC SPCA. Lots of ideas there, right, for how to move forward when it comes to the landlord and pet owner relationship. What is your advice for people who have pets, and what does the BC SPCA give in terms of guidance?
Basically, I think it's really important to try to develop, as you said earlier, that positive relationship with your landlord as a tenant, to be open and transparent, to have written policies so that each party kind of knows what their responsibilities are. And yes, definitely, as that veterinarian was saying, I think really having a veterinary reference is excellent, because that would show that, you know, your pet is spayed and neutered, that you're doing regular, you know, flea prevention. You can also be agreeing to ensure your dog is on leash when you're in common areas, that you're picking up after them. All of these, I think, are really important things to demonstrate responsibility as a pet guardian, so that you're, you know, with your references and your pet resume, that you're convincing that landlord that you're going to be a good tenant with your pet.
Megan, it's an ongoing issue. I'm sure we'll talk again. I do hope so. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
That's Megan Kant, Manager of Companion Animal Welfare Science and Policy with the BC SPCA. 12:42 now, 1:42 in the Mountain Time Zone. This is BC Today here on CBC. Well, today, Canada's greatest soccer player announced she's hanging up her boots. Burnaby's own Christine Sinclair is retiring. And this morning, Canada Soccer tweeted, gold medalist, Order of Canada, two-time bronze medalist, Canada Soccer Player of the Year, all-time leading international goal scorer. What an international career. Well, we're taking your calls. What does Christine Sinclair's soccer legacy mean to you? You can call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, pound 690 on your cell phone. And you can also email bctoday@cbc.ca. Now, I had the chance to interview Christine Sinclair in February 2020, just after her 185th goal. And I asked what the best reaction she got was after that goal.
The best response? So my teammates, Sophie Schmidt, put together this amazing video that we watched after the game. And it was pretty much all my current teammates, past teammates, professional teammates, just saying congratulations. People I hadn't seen in like 10 years. It was incredible. Definitely shed some tears watching that video.
And there's been so much celebration, and of course, a lot of young athletes so look up to you. What's it like for you to be such a role model?
It's something I've definitely had to like grow into, just because it's not the most comfortable thing for me, but it's a role I take very seriously. It's probably my most important thing I am now, which is to show these young kids that anything's possible, that with hard work, dedication, you can reach those dreams. When I was a youngster, I couldn't dream of playing for Canada and playing in the Olympics because it wasn't possible. And now these young players, I mean, anything is possible for them if they put in the work.
And do you see that as a big part of your legacy? I mean, what do you hope your legacy will be?
Yeah, just hopefully that I help change the sport of soccer here in Canada and globally, that I was a part of that shift to where now opportunities for women are there, whether it's overseas, here in North America. I mean, you can go play professionally wherever you want, and people will come watch and pay to come watch you. And it's been a journey, and it's been a wild ride.
Humble as always, as Christine Sinclair speaking to me in February 2020. We are taking your calls. What are your favorite Christine Sinclair memories? Was it that gold medal? And you can reflect on her legacy as well. What does it mean to you? 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. And joining me now to reflect on that legacy is Shireen Ahmed, senior contributor for CBC Sports. Hello there, Shireen.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us. What a day.
It's been emotional for a lot of people. Sinclair had put out a teaser last night at her Instagram, at about 9 p.m. Eastern, and it just showed a pair of boots hung up on what looked like a crossbar. And I actually took a photo of it and tweeted it out, and I said, "Is Canada ready for this?" Every single reply through Instagram or Twitter was no. And I've been thinking about this for a while because, I've followed Christine Sinclair's career for over 2 decades. I've started paying attention, and I had heard about her when she was playing at University of Portland alongside Megan Rapinoe, and they won a national championship. But she was on the radar for those of us that have been in this space. And just to sort of watch her come more out of her shell. I wrote a column about this as well, but one thing I've always known is that, and many of us in the soccer journalism spaces, she does not like media and interviews and attention. So, one of the most prolific players abhors that attention and would often sort of translate it to the team. And
that's right.
Before 2019, the Women's World Cup, there was a match at BMO in Toronto, and she was asked repeatedly about scoring at the tournament and whether she would break the record. And she just kept saying, "I'm not here for that. I'm here for Canada. I'm here for the team." And just sort of watching her, even her publishing her memoir last year was something that I knew would come, but just to sort of see her grow as a person that all these fans have access to, it's been really incredible. And her playing, and to watch her continue to give it her all, just like watching them win in Tokyo and then watching them literally exit tearfully in Australia. So it's been, the last couple of years have been tough, and then the battles with the federation. So it's not just one unique thing. We would have loved her to win a World Cup or something else, but the fact that she's actually retiring before the Paris Olympics speaks to her interest of the team's accolades as opposed to her own.
Wow, let's take a call here asking you for your thoughts and best memories of Christine Sinclair moments. What do you think her legacy will be, and what does it mean to you? Ian is joining us from Victoria. Hi, Ian.
Hello, how's everybody doing?
Oh, I'm doing well. Shireen, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, Ian.
Thanks very much for asking. How are you, and how are you feeling about this announcement? Are you ready?
No, I am not ready, because for 20 plus years, I've been constantly pleased, enthralled, happy. I can't point to any one specific incident or event, because her entire career has been outstanding in terms of setting an example of how to go and do, how to be successful without being a glory hound for media. Apologies. She's got the best interest of the team at heart. Perfect example of a team player attitude. And it's just been a joy and a delight to watch her progress through the years, through the events, the games that she's participated in, and watching her on and off the field. She's been so consistent, so much an example for everyone that is around her or watches her play. I use her as an example in the IT industry for people to see someone who makes a difference without caring that she's needing herself to make a difference.
Wow.
She just does it. I can't think of anything higher to say about her.
I think you've summed it up very well, and you've underscored what Shireen was saying as well, that for her, it really is about the team. Thanks for the call, Ian. You have a great day.
And you guys too. Thank you.
We actually have we had an earlier call from Chris in Cranbrook who said Sinclair is a big jewel for our country. And he's wondering, Shireen, you touched on this, the troubles with Canada Soccer. And he's wondering if that controversy might have had anything to do with her retirement.
I mean, that's an interesting point, and possibly, but to be really honest with you, I don't think this is it for Christine Sinclair in terms of the team. I think that perhaps playing, but I think her involvement with the game goes beyond actual playing. And will she be adjacent to any further conversations or developments? This is a chapter in her long book of being in love with the game and being a guardian of the game and a role model and a protector of it as well. And I don't foresee this being the end of that involvement at all. And just as that particular issue is not resolved fully, there's an interim agreement in play, and we'll see how it rolls out. And she's finished. She's retired internationally, but she still will see out her season with the Portland Thorns. And I do find it interesting that she is, which has been her home team for a very long time in the NWSL, but I do find it interesting that she's not going back for one more Olympics. And that could be for a variety of reasons. It could also be that, she's over 40 now, and the minutes that although, in a recent presser, Bev Priestman, the head coach, said that her fitness is outstanding. It really is. But there's also the idea there's players on the team who are literally half her age, and that there's weight. She's been through a lot. I saw something posted about she actually hasn't had time to stop, and whether it's advocating for equality in soccer, equal anything in soccer for men and women, and for the women in particular, this team. She hasn't had a break. And it would be, she joined the senior team at 16. That's a really long time. And she deserved. I saw a post by Steph Labe, who is one of her dear friends and teammates. And Steph Labe quipped in the post that you probably won't see this because we know that you've thrown your phone out the window. She deserves, and that's so funny. It's on Instagram. And it made me laugh because that's true. I think she's deserved and earned more than anything the love and respect of this country, but she deserves a lot of peace.
A little bit of a break. And, I watch a lot of girls soccer just because of people in my life. And whenever I go and watch, I do think of, wow, how much of this comes from the influence and impact of Christine Sinclair? What do you see when you see younger players, and how do you draw that line between her and its popularity?
Well, I think that's a great question. She is definitely, I know in my family, and this is something that I really love about her career. Christine Sinclair wanted to improve soccer in this country for the young girls to have the opportunities that she didn't get. She didn't get to play professionally at home. She had to leave. Mind you, Portland's really not that far from Burnaby. It could have been further. She never played in Europe, never played in anywhere else. She played closer to home, but it was never at home. And she's so deeply connected to her community, and she loves it. She's the pride of Burnaby, BC. And so my point is that she really inspired young boys and girls across the country. I know that when my family was sitting down to watch the 2012 Olympics, she played the game of her life. And after that, my boys knew who she was, they knew that team, but they couldn't name a single player on the men's side. And this went on for years, until the last couple of years where the men have made it, have accomplished far more. But Christine Sinclair is truthfully the face of soccer in this nation. And that when you think about Canada and the way that we haven't supported women's soccer here in the way that we should have, there was no, professional league, et cetera, et cetera. The fact that has happened is amazing. It's actually almost miraculous that, the highest scoring international player, men or women, is ours. She's from here and has made those, sort of reached those goals, literally, but also climbed those mountains despite the barriers. So she is an inspiration. She's literally the GOAT, and is, respected by teammates. And a little bit of the writing ahead of this announcement, I was talking to people from around the world that have played against her as early as 2002 and as recently as now. And, their comment is that her humility is the thing that strikes them the most. And that, I hope, has an impact on athletes all over.
Yeah. When I went to interview her, that was at Rogers Arena in 2020, and there were girls soccer team players there waiting to meet her, and that was part of the event. And Chris from Cranbrook actually called back and said, just commented again that after she finishes her league play, he hopes she comes back to Burnaby, the pride of Burnaby, and that she goes into coaching and training young girls in BC. Chris, there's an idea for you. And I know that they have recently celebrated the formal opening of the Christine Sinclair Community Center in Burnaby, and there was a big event there. So that may be. I don't know, Chris. That's a good suggestion, though. In our last minute here, you pointed to a piece this morning, Shireen, by Signa Butler on CBC. And the first line was, how do you begin to describe the impact Christine Sinclair has made on Canadian soccer? How do you?
I mean, this is the moment that as a journalist, I've been sort of waiting for a while, that when would this happen in discussions with other journalists who love her, and meaning that love her as a player and have loved covering her. She's a very, she's very, very private, and to watch her play and to play with the tenacity that she does, it's been an honor for me. And I mean, I thought Signa did a fantastic job on that column, and then on her piece, and then I wrote a column today about her impact globally, which is something that I really can't stop thinking about. But the impact as well on the sport itself, and that's something that I really hope Canadians think about.
Yeah, I can't wait to read your piece. Shireen, thank you so much for that time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Can't wait to read all the pieces. I think you said that. Shireen Ahmed, senior contributor for CBC Sports and a sports journalist. That is it for our show today. Thanks so much to our team this week. Melody Jacobson, Rachel Adams, Alan Regan, George Baker, Mel Carter, Mike Hillman, Mark Fairfield, and Greg Kisser. Thanks as well to David Jones, Rafe Arnott, and Megan Zwick. You can email us anytime, bctoday@cbc.ca. Watch us again on YouTube. Have a great weekend. I'm Michelle Eliot. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll be back with you on Monday.